say more about what internal family systems is, because I remember when I was first hearing that phrase, I don't know, a couple years ago, I started applying something in my own mind. I kind of made up, oh, that must mean such and such. And then when I found out what it actually means, it was very illuminating. Like it's like we have, I mean, you can speak to it much better than I, but within us, we have like different family members in our own humanity that need to be acknowledged, and they need to learn how to love one another and get along. And so we speak of an internal family system. So, but
Exactly.
say more to our audience about what that means and how it can help us to come to a more peaceful existence in our own lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it's helpful to understand that even our sense of self, our construct, or our idea that we have about what it means to have a self or be a self is kind of a relatively new construct, and it comes from psychology. So we have like Freudian theories, and like if you go back 300, 400, 500 years ago, or you go to St. Paul and the way he talks about the flesh of the spirit, these are all ideas that build up over time. So the last 100 years, we've been sold on this idea that we have like one way of being, and everything else is really not ourself. You know, and this is where I think about the Danny DeVito commercial where he needs a Snickers bar. You know, if you're feeling hangry, all you need is a Snickers bar, and then you're not Danny DeVito anymore, right? It's like, well, no, that the idea is actually the hangry part of us is still us. And if you say, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today or whatever, it's like, well, you are still acting yourself, even though maybe this is a different form or version of where you're at. So that's sort of the first step, is to realize maybe there's a different way to think about ourselves. Then in psychology, we used to diagnose something called multiple personality disorder, which is now called dissociative identity. And it's like, well, we can have this experience with so much trauma that we almost become crystallized into different personalities. And I've had patients like this. One day they come in the office and they look a certain way, walk a certain way, talk a certain way. They have a certain name. And then the next week they come and it's like an entirely different person came into your office. Different gait, different tone of voice, different facial, even like the muscles in your face can change. You look different.
Yep.
Well, long story short is that this one particular theorist started to realize that we all have a little bit of that in us. We can all have these different manners of being.
Like
and if we go even deeper,
kind of thing.
What's that?
Like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing.
Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde. And actually there's like a lot of different kinds. Maybe we have part of us that feels really social and gregarious, and we love to be the center of attention. Another part of us maybe wants to hide, would rather stay in bed, doesn't want to go to the party.
Yep.
And again, we're tempted to say like, well, I'm an extrovert, so that means, oh, this is who I really am. And we don't give ourselves the freedom to say, well, maybe sometimes I don't want to go to the party if I don't think that's who I really, quote unquote, really am. Well, we do have all these different parts inside of us. And if we're honest, we can acknowledge some of them we don't like very much. And it's nicer to think like, that's not really me. This perfect version of myself that I'm looking at how to act, and maybe it's a holy card version of myself, or it's the quote unquote way I'm supposed to be, that becomes who I think I really am. And all these other versions of myself, I just reject. Well, at the end of the day, it's called internal family systems. Like you said, it's like this family inside. And if you're doing family therapy, so like thinking about an actual family with different members of the family, you know, you bring everybody into the room and you say, all right, we got to get down to the bottom of the problem here. And then they start saying who the problem is or what the problem is. And, you know, maybe, you know, Uncle Frank drinks too much, you know, and, you know, now there's a conflict between mom and dad. And, you know, Susie, you know, the teenager is the problem. She's staying out too late, whatever. And all this fighting happens. Then you get to the end of the conversation and you realize like, well, everybody actually thinks that Uncle Frank is the problem. Well, kicking Uncle Frank out of the family is never the solution.
Right.
You know, but and if we approach Uncle Frank instead and say, okay, the drinking is causing all these problems, but like, what's going on for you? And you find out Uncle Frank is a war vet. He's got all this trauma. He needs help. Like, he's got a story too. And you realize, okay, with compassion and mercy, we can start to heal the family system, not by kicking people out, but by bringing people in, by showing more
Yes.
compassion and mercy. Well, that same disposition we can then bring to all the parts that are all the members of our internal family. The loudmouth part, the
Yes.
prideful part, the sensual part, the scared part, the imposter syndrome part, all those different parts. We can have a different disposition towards them.